was on at the Museum of Brisbane from 2nd of November 2007 to the 23rd of March 2008, so roughly a 4-month period, and obviously over Christmas, which was quite challenging to our marketing people. Our partners in the exhibition were the Park Centre for Mental Health, which is what the hospital is now known as. It's been known as many different names. So Queensland Health, and also Griffith University, the Centre for Public Culture and Ideas. And we worked directly there with Mark Finane, who had done an Australian Research Council funded long-term research project about the exhibition. So those are our two partners. And we thought it was important to sort of talk a little bit about the development of the exhibition, because the exhibition was actually in our program, I think, almost fairly soon after the museum opened in 2003. Mark Finane actually approached us. He'd done his research project and tried to get it published as a book, and was knocked back by lots of publishers who didn't really think that it was a topic of general interest. And so he brought the idea to the Museum of Brisbane, who agreed. And so the partnership began then, and not much was really done for quite a few years, although a few formalities took place. So it did have a long-term development. In terms of the actual exhibition itself, we probably only started in earnest in the very early part of 2007. So I think I was working out, it was about 9 to 10 months that we worked on it intensely. Although, as I said, about 2 years prior to that, we'd done a workshop with some of the staff out at Queensland Health. So a few things had happened prior to that. I think it's important to mention that so it's a history of Queensland's oldest and longest operating mental health facility. In fact, Queensland's oldest public health facility of any sort. So it was a history exhibition, but we brought it all the way up to contemporary times as well. And I thought it was important to point out that we had no access to any patient records. That was a really major consideration for us at the beginning, was that even though we were working closely with the historian who'd done a lot of historical research, Queensland Health have a 100-year coverage on all their records. Obviously not just individual people's medical records, but other correspondence, all sorts of things. So that was initially seemed like a huge wall that was put in place, but in fact just pointed us into another direction where it became very clear to us early on that it was about people, and so we needed to work directly with the people whose lives were involved with this hospital. And just very quickly to take you through the exhibition format as it came out, this is the very last bit actually. This was the entry area, and this was sort of an installation of artefacts representing patients' lives, because one of the constants throughout the history was that when you are admitted as a patient in a mental hospital, you have to give up all your personal possessions, and in fact you're taken off the electoral roll, and all sorts of things like that. So that was the entry, was an installation of just this is about people's lives. From there we had different sections. The first bit was sort of like an exhibition within the exhibition. It was a small sort of potted history. Part of the reasons we did that was because we wanted to give Queensland Health something at the end of the partnership, and they obviously couldn't take the whole exhibition, so we designed a smaller series of 7 panels that they could have. Then there was a section that actually looked at the site and the history of the site, and you'll see in one of these images there's a big tabletop map where we developed an interactive where people could press buttons and explore the buildings on site. And then the remainder of the exhibition was grouped around these thematic areas, and it was just a mixture of artefacts, documents, photographs, personal stories, grouped in sort of wall clusters. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. And then the very last section was this bit that we called the living room, and that was where there was a sofa and a whole lot of information about mental health today. So that was really bringing it up to date. We wanted people to be able to access information if they needed to, because we've heard lots of stories about how bewildering it is when there's a mental health issue going on and you might not realise it. It was also a chill-out space, which is an idea we borrow from the mental health sector. They don't ever get together as a group and not provide a place where people can go and take some time out or, you know, whatever. So this is the tabletop map, the screen I was telling you about. So that was the chill-out room, and in that section was also the exhibition of first aid boxes. So that was a participatory art project done with people who are experiencing mental health difficulties, and they took first aid boxes, standard St John's Ambulance first aid boxes, emptied them out of their first aid and created their own first aid boxes. So it's full of some personal mementos that get them through the day to day. So that's sort of how the exhibition turned out. Now I'm going to hand over to Leanne, who's going to talk a bit about the process.
This was an absolutely fantastic project to work on. I think it was probably the favourite project I've ever worked on in my career, is working in museums and visitor work. I think that it was really important, actually, when you talk about process. There's a broad process. Inside any creative process, as you know, you've got to have your tick-off points and your sign-off points, and we work within a bureaucracy, so they're very important to us. But I think that Tim mentioned you put your idea in front, you decide what you're heading for, and you continue to measure against that as you head towards it. And when Joe mentioned that we didn't have any access to patient records, but we realised really early on that we had to tell this as a people's story. We couldn't talk about the history of the buildings, we couldn't just talk about the history of how we dealt with people with mental health issues. We had to talk about people. We had to talk about people that worked there, people that suffered from mental health issues, people that had family. It was all about the people. So we had to keep coming back to that when this threatened to become enormous, take over all of City Hall and, you know, everything else in the city. We had to focus back in on the people. So I think the three crucial things that I was going to say were you couldn't do it without it, and if you were ever going to do something that was sensitive, get a group of people together who know your topic. Never pretend to be the authority on your topic, because we're not authorities on mental health issues. We're not even close, although we might be now, but for completely different reasons. So, but I think that getting Mark Vinay, who was the professor, who was the man who knew the history, he understood the history, he had that understanding of the nearly 150-year history. We worked with Carol, who'll tell you a little bit more about herself. Deborah Gilroy, who had worked on doing 40 oral histories with staff and or patients who have been connected to the hospital. We worked with Neil Price, who is actually a mental health care nurse and now works in the mental health care sector and worked doing that project. He's an arts worker as well, so he worked on the first aid kit boxes. We worked with a wonderful, that's not enough wonderful, woman called Nadia Bia, who actually has been at the park and worked at the park for 35 years, and she works as the patient in the office of the patient friend, so she's an advocate for the patients. And so she has this incredible love for what she does and for the people that have lived and moved through there. So designed by committee runs chills through my spine, but these guys weren't the committee. They didn't approve anything. We had to still get our approvals. These were the people that helped us develop the content to say it's on track, we're doing justice, we're heading in the right direction. And that was probably the most important aspect of everything we did. Amazingly, it came in under budget as a project. It was the first project I've ever done in my life that came in under budget. All the others came in on budget, can I just say. I think that as you get into the process, for me as a project manager who's from a creative background, not from a budget and program background, the process became completely about the people involved, the people we were working with, the delivery to the people. Everything was about the people in the end, truly. When we went through the stage development, you know, Joe freaked out early on because it was a massive history. How do we do justice to this massive history? How do we do justice to a massive history that has caused so much pain, that continues to cause so much pain, that has a 100-year cap? If my mother was in the mental hospital, I could not get her records because I'm not my mother. I could not get them as her child. I would not be able to get them out. So there was this, you know, how do you get into this thing that by its very nature is so secretive that that's where the pain comes from? So it was this kind of conundrum that we had to really deal with. We didn't want to do it as a timeline because it wasn't about 1865 to the present, so a very small part was a timeline. I think we all have, we don't really work in timelines because we're telling stories, and stories are not limited to timelines. The word groupings in the themed areas might seem very amorphous, but it was crucial. When the curatorial team or the curatorium realised that there were 4 key groupings of words that summarised everything, and in fact the whole history of people with mental illness was about labels, we kind of knew we were onto something. Because a word today would mean a different word to someone 50 years ago or 100 years ago. You know, talking about the loonies was something that people still talked about now, which would be very inappropriate now. So the use of language and words was crucial to the whole exhibition. Subtle and sensitive, I think it said in that thing that we achieved that. Joe and I said in our first, very early on, Joe and I had only just started working together. We started working on this one. And we said that if people left the exhibition and said, I'm never going to look at anyone the same in the street again, we've achieved something. That was there's our benchmarks, council indicators. But that was our benchmark to say, if you never looked at a person ever the same again in the street, then we've hit it. Someone wrote that in our festival. We were very excited. But we felt that we'd achieved something because we'd made people look at other people differently, and that was very powerful. I'm really proud of some films we're going to show you there. My proudest thing about doing this, and you'll see a little tiny bit of those, interviewing staff, patients, workers, colleagues, friends, family. I'm saddest that we weren't able to spend more time with the participants, and I think this is part of everything you respond to. You talk about time frames and turnovers and next projects and programs. These people gave us their most personal stories, and we put them on public display. That process, which Carol talked a little bit about, was amazing. I mean, we're talking about really very painful, traumatic stuff. And they shared that with us, and Joe and I found ourselves many times in tears about what was shared with us. And then realising, you know, coming to a point, Joe came back from one meeting and said, why are we doing this? Why are we telling these stories to people? And then you realise because they had to be told, because they've never been told, and go from there. So I guess I always like to hear from these things, what would you do again? I would do it all again, but I would spend more time with the people, because without those people, without those stories, we didn't have an exhibition, and they were to be treasured greater than any object in any collection. And he's low.
Well, that's great. My name's Carol Lowe, and my role in the team, I came in as a community engagement person. So I was basically the person going out to community and letting them know that this exhibition was coming up. So I was focusing on the community mental health sector. So organisations like RAFNI that has a support work for friends and relatives with mental health, schizophrenia fellowship, some of the drop-in centres like Place to Belong, Stepping Stones, a whole range of different organisations like that. And then through that process of informing them, working with people to see who is there who would be prepared to tell their stories. And I guess, like Leanne said, the whole process was an incredibly intense one for us. I've got to say first up that it was a very scary project. I've had many years as a community work in Brisbane, but not in the mental health sector, and all of my feelings about mental illness, my fears of mental illness, came right up to the fore, and realising over the months that I worked how we distance ourselves from mental illness and from people who are suffering mental health issues, and think, oh, it's not us, it's not in our family, it belongs over there. And I think it'd be true to say that we all had this journey where we actually realised how much we actually are all together on this. And part of the thing of bringing people's stories to be hidden for so long out into the public is that we all, I guess, heard and we all shared and we took some responsibility for what had been going on. The sort of things that have been going on in Walston Park that we heard from the people that I got to know were ones of severe treatment, really. So people already living with the severity of psychiatric disability and being put into a place where they were witnesses and were actually victims of a range of different forms of violence. So so physical assaults, sexual assaults, and they were part of actually seeing people being assaulted and neglected as well. So it wasn't an issue simply working with people who've got psychiatric illness and who are having the ups and downs of their illness. When I was doing the consulting with them, it was also people who have, by their own definition, experienced a lot of trauma and are living day to day with post-traumatic stress syndrome, which means lives where they could have triggered off flashbacks and memories from the past. They could live with extreme anxiety coming up, at least when they least wanted it. So how did we actually do this engagement with people and not re-traumatize was a major concern. I think what we concentrated on was creating the time to spend with people. Time is extremely important. Some sort of continuity with people, so that it was important to keep contact with people right from the beginning, throughout the whole process, and right towards the end. You couldn't just go and do a one-off interview and say, okay, fine, you do a film vignette for us, that's great. There needed to be a whole support network, so from people getting to know me, they get to know Joe, they get to know Leanne, they get to know Carmen. So it was actually a support network to take part. I guess the other thing that came through pretty strongly was that this process for people and why they in fact engaged was they had hopes from this experience that they would be able to move on from those traumas that they experienced in Boston. And certainly some of the people who took part spoke very, very warmly and very strongly about their experience. In one of these slides, there's a slide showing the exhibition with two straitjackets in mental colour. But one of the women who I spoke to more recently to get some feedback on the exhibition, she said it was the straitjackets that was the thing for her. Because when she was put in there, she was put in there as a teenager. That was another part of the hidden history of Walton Park. A lot of girls who had been through the whole system of being in children's homes because they were abused or neglected, or in homes subsequently because they were seen as being out of control, beyond control, and actually ended up in Walton Park as teenagers in wards with other patients who perhaps were in there as having murdered someone as criminally insane. This woman saw the straitjackets. She said, first off, that straitjacket's on the wrong way around. So she was able to actually get it right for us. And the second thing was, this was when she visited with you, Leanne. She went back for a second visit, and she said she kept going back to the straitjackets. There was a lot to see there, but she kept going back to the straitjacket. And she said it was that actually helped her to move on. Such a sort of, enormously potent object that was in there, but one which she had experienced many, many times, being put in that straitjacket and put in isolation. And she said she realized she was never going to be put in that straitjacket again. She was never going to be going back to Walton Park as it was then again, and that she now could move on. So I think the exhibition reached way beyond any of our expectations of the way in which museums can play a part in commemoration and healing. I think now we're going to watch
Just going to watch a really
the
short
DVD,
excerpt,
which
yeah.
shows some of the film vignettes.
I'll just tell you, while we started up, we interviewed on film about 40-something people. It varied from past patients to associates All in all, there would have been about 20 to 30 hours worth of stuff that we shot, reduced and edited down to 4 20-minute excerpts in the exhibition, the balance of which we've gone back and sought permissions from Auckland people to deposit them into the State Library, because there's information in these interviews that doesn't exist anywhere else. We didn't find it, we heard it for the first time. This is a really short excerpt from one of the hardest parts, I think, of the exhibition.
Well, I first went to Goodna in 1968, and I went up there to do a course in mental health and pastoral care. And what shocked me about the place at that particular stage was that quite a lot of the staff were recruited from the mines, were ex-miners, and the assistant superintendent, Dr. Neville Knott, organised and ran the course, and I was quite appalled at some of the things that he was saying, like that some of the staff had severe mental health problems themselves, even more severe than some of the patients that they were caring for. And I saw a little bit of evidence of that during that particular course that I was doing. So that was the first time I went up there.
Some of the staff would come to work drunk. You could smell them when they walked in the door. They were angry, they didn't want to be there, but they had to go there because they'd always been there. I think the staff were more institutionalised than the patients sometimes.
I went into Ward 6 and the patients weren't violent at all. The poor patients, the ones that were violent was the staff. And I went into Ward 6 and I just seen some horrific things in Ward 6. It was a terrible place, and the patients were frightened of the staff. They used to cower down when they come near them.
Because I hated being locked up at night, and I was stuck over in Ward 6, which was a security ward, and it was just like being in hell itself. It was
when my girl hung herself in a cell, so they took everybody out and told me to move in and said there's ghosts there, they'll haunt you.
There was an old woman, she was about 70, her name was Ethel, and she slept in a small white room by herself, and every night, without fail, you would wake, when you went to wake her up in the morning, there would be shit everywhere, all over her, all over the white flimsy gown that she was dressed in, even in winter when it was -4 degrees. Remembering it's Goodna, you know, it's not Brisbane, it's Goodna. And she would have shit all over the walls, and she would be woken by the registered nurse with a fire hose. She would be sprayed out of bed with a fire hose. And I just can't, you know, I mean, I was 18 or 19 when that happened, those kinds of things. I just never, ever will get those kinds of images out of my head. I went in one morning and I got there, I don't know, 3/4 of an hour early, and I got her out of bed and I took her into a hot bath with bubbles and made her smell better and got all the shit off her. I didn't clean up the room. But you know, I got my tyre slashed for that, as I did get my tyre slashed for other things that I did. You didn't talk about those things to anybody. Not the group of nurses that you were with, certainly not the educators, it was such a closed environment that I wasn't, maybe others were, I wasn't going to talk about those kinds of things to anybody.
There was this girl in Wilson who had been in solitary confinement for 3.5 weeks, and she was one of the ones that got certified and sent up to Osler House. And I knew that she had no family and that nobody would probably visit her, so I decided to go and visit her. So I went up there and sat down with her in a lounge chair and talked with her. And there it was that I saw the other young person who had gone up the year before was still there. And that sort of really shocked me, that this young person who was 13 was still there after 1 year. And I knew some of the other people, you know, who had been put in there, who had committed very, very serious offences, like multiple murders. And anyway, I sat there and I talked to this young woman who was 15, Teresa was her name, and we chatted away, and then this other lady came down and sat next to her and then took a great big bite out of her arm. And nobody seemed to be interested, nobody seemed to care, and I was just appalled by the place.
So you can see the kind of material, sensitive material that we were dealing with. And I'd just like to talk a bit about how it was really important for us to gain the support and trust of other staff in the museum. So we, very early on, we decided that we would take all of the staff in the museum on a tour to Goodna. And it was fun. It was still serious, but the staff could learn about what the place was like in its current situation, what kind of people lived there. We got to meet and see the people who lived there. We were toured through all the buildings, and it also allowed the staff to deal with their own fears of mental illness and prejudices. There was one memory that stands out for me was our designer was bear hugged by a patient that just came up from right behind her. Frightened her, but she didn't mind. It was fun. So training the staff in the museum and educating them in how to deal with the different responses that we might receive when the exhibition was on. So we invited Nadia Beer from the park to come out and talk to us about how we might deal with that. So one way was, one of the things was that we had to care for our visitors, that it might be very traumatic for them going through the exhibition and remembering what it truly was like for them. So just letting our staff know that people may just want to talk about it, which is fine, and they may not want a response back from us, but just somewhere that was safe for them to feel that they could talk about it. One of our staff, an information officer, suggested that we bring out a box of tissues and put them in the, what was it called? The living room, where you can sit and feel safe. So that was, one way of them suggesting ways of how we could care for our visitors when they came there. The Sharing Lives Lived program was a public program that we did along with the Queensland Alliance, and this as well involved our staff to be trained and in the same way. So it involved 4 sessions, I think, of conversations where we invited
people, mental health consumers, to come in and talk about their experiences, their personal experiences. And I think these covered topics such as what it's like to be on the road to recovery, what it's like to be a mother living with mental illness. So, and these were very well attended as well. I think we had about 35 to 50 people in each session, which was really, really good for us. So, yeah.
I'll just quickly wrap up that we're very proud of this exhibition, and I would like to acknowledge the whole team at the museum. It was more than just us, and more than just the team at the museum as well. I guess one of the regrets I have about it is also connected with what we learned and what Carol talked about, that healing aspect, which I think was unexpected. We didn't really quite realise that it could have that sort of power. So the fact that it was just a temporary exhibition, I think, is a great shame. And we are hoping to help relocate. We will give our exhibition to the park if they can find a space for it, because there's a great desire, I think, in the community to hear these stories and share these stories. And the responses we got certainly indicated that. So I'd like to see more exhibitions about topics like this, and a permanent presence out there at the park. Actually, we found it quite, I think all of us found it quite hard to move on and work on other projects, because this one was so meaningful. So as I said, I'd really like Museum of Brisbane to take on other topics like this. And I was going to conclude, I'm quite emotional now going back over it, but Leanne recently got a letter from one of the women that we worked with, and it just puts it all into a whole different perspective. So we thought it would be good to read it, because we'd like to urge other museums to take on work like this as well. But she said, "Dear Leanne, you'll never believe it, but I waited all this time, 7 years, to try and convict some of those Goodna people, and 2 weeks ago the sergeant rang me to say his superiors won't do it, so I waited for nothing. If you and Joe had not done what you did about Goodna to get some of the story out, I would feel like I couldn't go on. I am heartbroken." And also the women who started with me, I found that they all gave up over the years, so I was left standing on my own. I didn't even know it. It was only thinking of the Goodna story that made me pick myself up again. Though I am far from well, I'm getting there. I will never be able to thank the three of you. We still stay in touch with a number of these women, and I guess it's a lot more than what a museum exhibition can do, but a museum exhibition can do an awful lot, and that's what we learned. Thanks.
Well, I don't know whether people are up to questions really. It is very powerful and quite confronting, the subject matter that you've presented, and it might be that people aren't ready to ask questions, but if you are, you've got a team of people here. Is there anyone who has questions? Graham?
Not a question so much as, I think it was 1969 I actually worked there, and I had to put up roller blinds as a contractor, and they basically searched you as you went in, make sure you didn't take any screws or anything like that. And they made me take my shoelaces off and my belt. And it's so difficult to put up roller blinds because you get pocket screws, other things, without your belt. And I was there for about 2 or 3 weeks, and I never ever felt any problems with the inmates, but the staff sometimes made you wonder. And that just brought it all back. Very interesting.
Did you find that the exhibition provoked stories like Graham's?
Yes.
How did people tell those stories in the exhibition?
Yeah, we put these books out, and we actually had 2. One that said, "Share your Goodna story and tell us what you think of our exhibition." So we actually got, I think we got over 650 written comments and stories, some of which we would like to add to, you know, the State Library, or we've given them all to the hospital as well, because we've got stories of people's personal experiences just like that, as well as lots of other things. Again, that's another aspect that you could really build on, because if you looked at the population of Queensland and the 55,000 people that pass through there as patients, and their friends, relatives, family, neighbours, everybody was touched or worked there or visited there. It's not merely the hidden story people think it is, it touches many, many people. So we certainly like that.
And did you have any sort of issues with any of the visitors or experiences that they occurred that the staff had to deal with that particularly relate to the...
Yes, we, well, one that immediately comes to mind was a woman who came there whose mother had died in the hospital, and when she was a child, so she really didn't know very much about it. And I guess this gave her a whole perspective and insight into what her mother may have lived with. So she talked to our information officer for a long time, who actually happened to be someone who comes from a Goodna family, and a lot of her family worked there. And she was very understanding. She spent a lot of time with her, tried to find out more about her mother, contacted her several times, let her know when the exhibition was closing, and I went to extraordinary lengths. That's just one example, but we had quite a few tears, a lot of people that just wanted to talk, a lot of people wanting to reflect upon whether things have changed or not. You know, maybe we're dealing with mental health better, maybe we're not, those kinds of discussions.
Lots of people gave comments, because I think what we haven't talked much about today is the whole exhibition is multiple viewpoints and equal multiple viewpoints, and you will have two comments about something in very close proximity in a physical space that are completely contradictory, and we had to be happy with that, because the history as we gave it was the personal stories. So we had lots of people come along and say it was fantastic, and it reminded them of the best years of their life, and they'd never worked anywhere like Goodna. And that was, you know, one extreme, that it was a fantastic and an incredibly positive experience for them.
A lot of the former staff came back many times in different groups. We had some of the current staff there coming out on sort of training type things. We also had the Mental Health Review Tribunal, who are the people who make decisions for people. They came as a group and also did some sort of training there. So we actually had other types of responses we didn't quite expect when we used it in that way, which was great.
Did you have any particular advice towards the interview? What did you do about that?
We had people like Carol has come, which build relationships with her staff. There was Deborah Gilroy, who I mentioned, and she had interviewed a lot of the former patients, so she had relationships. Carol built relationships with people who what was their patients or their personal experience of suffering from mental illness.
So while I hadn't worked with people with mental health issues before, I had worked as a community worker with people who were refugees. And so the whole issue of trauma and re-traumatization was very high in my consciousness, and also the importance of spending time with people. So for something like this, ideally we would have had another 6 months added on at the beginning, so there would have been a lot more time to reach out to people. For me, it was a really interesting stage, because once I'd formed relationships with a number of people, and they had said, yes, we want to share our stories, we feel it's important that it's in the public arena. That then there was a step for me to introduce them to Joe. And I realised I was actually feeling quite protected, you know. Oh, now they've got to meet the institution.
Yeah.
Lovely Joe. But so there was a lot of really interesting things in how we try and create these relationships, how we then broaden that network of support and relationship. And it's a very delicate thing. And then as Joe said, they're still hearing from people now. What if I had one of these, it would have been, we would have had more of a kind of farewelling at the end,
because it was an intensive time, and more of an opportunity for them to get feedback, people who participate as people live with mental health issues. So we could have, I think this goes into a whole new arena of skills for museum practitioners. So we need to learn what it is and how do we need protocols and how do we actually do this.
I was also going to say they supported each other at the filming. Wally in particular, who you saw, who was a priest, which is most fortunate because the day was incredibly intense and he just stepped in and looked after people because a whole lot of things went wrong, as they always do, and we ended up filming it in a public place, which we didn't mean to do, and he looked after everybody. But they did look after each other too.
So we said to people there, bring along a support person, make sure you've got someone with you. And then there were things like providing taxi vouchers so people were looked after to go. Make a phone call the next day, see how things were. So continuing contact with that time and broadening that network of support.
I mean, even our sound guy, was it sound guy? He was a bit traumatised the next day. The ones you saw there was a couple more that were very difficult. And he was really traumatised the next day. He was not in so much, so caring for him. Joe and I are bored, you know. I think all of us reached
We
a long
all
way.
supported each other a lot as well.
It's the issues, they call it vicarious traumatization, but it is like you have nightmares and you feel quite isolated because you've actually shared this world. It's quite a horrific world that other people in our general day don't know about. So you tend to we got really close because of that, and they need to be aware of that and support each other.
My question was how did the institution support you guys?
Yes, I think so. Yeah.
Institution meaning?
The museum of Brisbane.
Yes. Oh, is that what you mean? Yeah.
Yeah, I just meant like you've gone in, discovered this
Yeah.
world, let's say you are traumatised by that. And you've got to go back and, like you say, pick up a new job.
Yeah.
And you've still got this in the background, up in a way. So as a manager, you think you'd have to, how do you manage something like this? You know?
Yeah, I think it is an issue, and let's talk about some of the things we tried to do. But again, curatorial team, we're initiating that through our colleagues. I couldn't have done it without Carol. She's supported me a lot. So, and my colleagues, I don't know that it was all that structured and official because we were feeling our way in the dark a little bit. But I think it's an important, if you're going to take on something like that, you have to think about it first.
I was just going to ask, you're saying about the people who had actually been inside the inmates. But what about the general public? I mean, is there a large response from the general public?
Yeah. Nearly 60,000 visitors. Much more media coverage than, just for sort of things that we use to measure these things. A lot more media coverage than we expected, including Radio National came and made a 3-part series using the same sort of people. But I think, the comments that we got in the books, lots of general public, a lot of people, someone else from another institution, why are you doing that? Why? Who do you think is going to come and see that? But we didn't have any problems with that at all. I think being in City Hall is helpful in that respect because it is actually quite an open public place, albeit quite official and formal. There's a lot of float through people who just spend time in the public spaces of that building. But lots of.
I thought lots really well.
When you visited, we went.
Yeah, we didn't even know. We could talk about this for days,
Sorry.
by the way, so just stop us. But, initially, we didn't think there would be all that many artefacts, or I'm not sure how to use them, but in fact, it's about looking at things, the stories they could tell. Making cigarettes out of toilet paper is fun. Making some
museum practice.
Just one.
Sorry.
I was just going to say with the artefacts, I think that's where our curatorial development group really helped as well, because Nadia, for example, who had been there for 35 years, the types of objects we had to draw on, I was literally taken into a basement. I said,